Hi, honey, how are you? It's Teknikolour. If you're already following me on my Twitch channel, you already know about my new legacy challenge around the world. But if you don't, it's this really cool new legacy challenge that my boyfriend and I wrote together, where each generation is focusing on the gameplay and the world of a new pack. Right now, we are currently on Generation 1 in San Sequoia from Growing Together, focusing on growing together in parenthood. My founder, Ace Wyndham, is a writer, so I wanted him to join the Avant Gardes Club, which meets at South Square Coffee in Windenburg. I kind of felt like the club space was a little bit of an afterthought, and it didn't feel as if the cafe was all that nice either. So I decided to do a little bit of a renovation. So why don't we look at the speed build? On Christmas last year, my dad got me into this show on BritBox, Shakespeare and Hathaway, Private Investigators. I think he technically started me on the very last episode, but it was a Christmas special, so it was kind of fitting. It was really cute and I really enjoyed it. And then after that, we watched maybe like 1 or 2 more episodes together. And then I had to convince my boyfriend to join me in watching the entire series, and we both got a little obsessed with it. Every single episode would end, and then we'd be like, do you want to watch another? Because we just couldn't get enough of it. But it basically follows 2 people, Luella Shakespeare and Frank Hathaway. Luella is a former hairstylist or a salon owner, and Frank Hathaway is an ex-detective. They have an assistant, Sebastian, who is an aspiring actor and absolutely adorable, and they send him out on incognito missions. So they don't send him as Sebastian, they send him as whoever, and he just takes on the role. I don't know, the whole show is just absolutely adorable. I hope that they give it a 5th season. If you watch it and you like it, I highly suggest it. I think if you are in the UK, it's probably on BBC, but if you're located elsewhere, like I'm in New York City and I watched it on BritBox or Acorn, but I think it was BritBox, one of the 2. You might be asking yourself, okay, but what does this have to do with The Sims 4? It really doesn't, but Windenburg, which is where the Avant Gardes Club meets, is set in a similar sort of world as where Shakespeare and Hathaway takes place, and the office of Shakespeare and Hathaway Private Investigators fits right in that world. And I know that it's a cafe with the Avant Gardes Club built into it, but I wanted to change it, and I kind of wanted it to be sort of inspired by the Shakespeare and Hathaway office. There is a little location that is specific to Sebastian's like reception area and maybe how he would have decorated it. And there's definitely touches of Frank Hathaway and Luella Shakespeare in there, but I really wanted to share it with you, and I needed it for my new legacy challenge. My founder is a freelance writer and his husband is actually an author, but I needed the 2 of them to have this club space where they could be remote working if they needed to, but also still hang out in their club, which my founder was very upset that he wasn't meeting with his club after his 2 twin boys were born. After we got through the toddler stage, my twins aged up into children, I was finally able to kind of bring the club back in, and I wanted them to have a nice space. So this is what I came up with. I really struggled with the roof, which I usually struggle with the roofs in this game. I kind of cut that entire portion out of the speed build. Otherwise it would have been really long because I was just going back and forth trying to figure out how the heck to roof this. But anyway, the offices of Shakespeare and Hathaway, Private Investigators, at least the exterior portions, are shot at Lord Leicester Hospital. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But this is in Warwick, England, and it's an actual place. And I wanted to recreate it here in The Sims. So the new South Square Coffee renovation is loosely based on the Lord Leicester Hospital. So I wanted something that would be 2 floors. The build itself actually takes up way more space than I thought. The shape of it is a little odd, but I think I figured out a way to make it work, at least for me. The bottom portion has bathrooms on the left, and then in the back, there's a whole long wall of bookcases. And then on the whole right side, there's the cafe, which also takes in a little bit of a more modern feel. And then on the second floor, the club, instead of having this tiny room off of the bathrooms, which is how the original build was, they have the whole floor to themselves. And when you first walk in, I have it set up as if it's Sebastian from the show, his reception area. And then the rest of it is this sort of living space that's kind of decorated by Luella, co-working space that is decorated by Frank, and then also a kitchenette sort of area that's inspired by all 3 characters. A part of the reason that I wanted to use this location as the inspiration for my build is that the entrance is in the courtyard. I thought that was a really cool idea, and I really wanted to recreate that here. I really wanted to find something to make the building stand out a bit from the other surrounding buildings. So I was looking through Debug and I found this gear and I thought it looked really cool. So I wanted to add that as a kind of focal point or an area of interest. The original build had a little bit of a breezeway, and I took the opportunity to move it, but still included in the build. And I wanted the build to be mostly traditional, mostly this old style. So the windows, the doors, everything like that fits. However, I wanted to include where the archways are for that breezeway. I wanted to include a whole wall of modern windows, sort of enticing people to come into the cafe because you probably wouldn't see that much through the traditional windows. But also I wanted there to be a little bit of a distinction that it's the cafe and not the club and not this older style of building. I wanted it to be a place where pretty much anyone would want to hang out and then maybe be more interested in the club if they wanted to join. In the club space, I really wanted a few different distinct sections. I wanted a kitchenette. I wanted there to be a bathroom specifically for the club. I wanted there to be a reading nook because I also got the book nook kit. I wanted there to be a co-working space and then also a sort of living space. And so that I could have a touch of Shakespeare and Hathaway private investigators in there, I wanted Sebastian's little reception area. So the whole second floor is massive, but it still fits all of those checkboxes. You can see I use a lot of the book nook items specifically for that reading nook area, but then I had the idea to raise it up because it felt as if it was too large. I don't know. I feel like I've seen so many people use stacks and stacks of these bookcases, which is probably what it's meant for, but it didn't feel as cozy, especially with the windows that I had chosen. So I wanted it to be raised up. So there is a platform in that specific room. I'll admit, I also struggled a bit trying to figure out where to place the second interior staircase, because while there is the opening for the club to gain access from the courtyard, I also wanted there to be sort of like a back door, because in the show Shakespeare and Hathaway Private Investigators, they sort of leave out of a different way, like if they don't want to deal with whoever is in the office at that moment. And I kind of wanted to have a little bit of a nod to that. I love having the kitchen just kind of like right off of that staircase. And then right to the side of that is the co-working space. But one thing that I knew that I really wanted was that book nook, that little reading nook that I made. I wanted there to be the 2 staircases because I wanted the whole floor to be open. But even though it was an open floor plan, which I don't really like, I do not like open floor plans. If I can build a wall, I'll build a wall. But I wanted this to be more open and airy because it felt as if it would have been that way originally. When it came to including bathrooms in this build, I wasn't really sure what to do because the only other time that I've made a community style lot, and it was a cafe as well, was for a shell challenge. So I had to find a place that the bathrooms would fit. And in this situation, I could put the bathrooms anywhere. I could build around the bathrooms. I didn't want to change the actual shape of my build. So I still had to find a way to fit bathrooms in a logical way. And while I'm not really in love with the way that these bathrooms are laid out, I think it kind of fits. It sort of feels as if they had to kind of like retrofit a bathroom in. So it's a little quirky, but I liked how it looked, so I kept it, and I couldn't figure out any other way that I would have fit a bathroom in. I also wanted there to be a specific space for the employees of the cafe so that they had their kitchen area that they could prep everything and not just have the espresso bar. In the original version of South Square Coffee, it felt as if there really wasn't that much seating. So to me, it felt like a very small cafe in a rather large building. So I wanted there to be a lot more seating in this build. I wanted to use the same Book Nook kit bookcases, but I wanted them to look different than the Avant Garde space bookcases. So that's why I use these in a color that more matches the walls and not the wooden beams. I don't know why I did this, but I had the reception area laid out really weirdly. I wanted it to be a little bit raised. I'm not sure why. I think I thought it was funny because Sebastian, the receptionist character from Shakespeare and Hathaway, he's really tall. So I thought it would be kind of comical to have his little area raised, even though I know it's not going to be him and all Sims are basically the same height anyway. And I didn't want it to be a huge space, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to put a laptop there. I did end up putting a laptop, specifically the typewriter cottage living laptop. I really love that one. I think it's so cute. I'm really happy with the way that this kitchenette turned out because it honestly feels like it's a mixture of all three characters. I don't know why. I felt like the clean lines were very reminiscent of Frank Hathaway kind of being like by the book, but not really. And the colors of the chairs felt very Luella. And Sebastian, I felt kind of had that like sparkle and just the like whimsy of his character within the rug. It just felt as if everyone was represented in that space. And again, I'm not playing with Sims that are those characters, but it just felt as if this whole build was kind of reminiscent of Shakespeare and Hathaway. Again, if y'all are not watching this show, please go watch it. Honestly, if you like shows like Murder, She Wrote or Midsummer Murders, stuff like that, I feel like you would really enjoy this. I also knew that for the living space or meeting area, I wanted it to be this more airy spot. I wanted to fit a fireplace if I could. I wanted there to be this big coffee table, these large comfy couches. I just wanted something that felt really big and airy. And then trying to find a rug for it was a struggle. I wanted something that was fitting with the color scheme, but I also wanted something that wasn't too matchy-matchy. I got really excited once I got to the clutter sort of decoration of this build because it felt as if I was finally making a place for my individual sim as well as the other Sims in the club. It felt as if I started representing everyone in the club and anyone who could be in the club. It started to become something that I was really proud of for my own gameplay. And even though I'll put this on the gallery so anyone can use it, I wanted it to be something that fit my own game primarily. Something that I also really like to include in all of my builds is a lot of greenery. I like plants and I want them all represented, and I don't think we have enough. And I tried to pepper in as many plants as I could. If you watched my last speed build video, I think I mentioned in that video that I was going to Prague. I did end up going to Prague and I had a really, really good time. And I think Also, the history and the architecture around there, I think I sort of wanted to decorate the same way here. So that probably also contributed to this build. But if you were wondering, I had a really, really good time in Prague. I'm kind of a picky eater and I liked pretty much everything that I tried there. I had such a good time seeing all of these wonderful places. And one place that was really cool was the Bone Church. It's this chapel that is decorated with human bones. And the really cool thing about that is we had played on my stream over on twitch.tv/Teknikolour. We played GeoGuessr. If you've never heard of it, it's this sort of Google Maps sort of game. So you're plopped down in a specific area and you have to try to figure out by moving around in Google Street View where you're located, and there's no indicator of where you are. There's no street names or anything like that. Anything that would be in Google Street View that would be an indication of where you are is removed, and you just have to try to figure out using context clues, like maybe there is some sort of sign, some landmark that you might know, and try to figure out where you are. And this one time it was around Halloween, and we were doing these creepy sort of abandoned sort of maps. So one of the places that it brought us to was this Bone Church. All of us in chat were like, where the heck are we? It was so creepy because it was unexpected to see a church decked out in human bones, but it was so dark and you could not move around. It seemed as if it was a much bigger place than it ended up being. It wasn't very large. I thought from being in the GeoGuessr version of it that it was a portion of it that we were seeing, and it was going to be this much larger location, but it wasn't. And it was so creepy being down there. There was a chandelier made of human bones. There was this like pyramid thing made of human bones, and guys, they were working on it while we were there. They're actually doing a bunch of renovations, and I think the floor was starting to sink. So they had to quickly try to keep a lot of the bones from falling and breaking. And then they had people that were working on restructuring that pyramid sort of thing. It was so creepy. There, you know how like you can go to like a hardware store and they have like those big gallon bucket things? There was that, but with human femurs in it, and they were just like picking them up and moving them to places. It was so creepy. I actually have a postcard. It's kind of holographic, but I don't know if it's going to show up great on camera, but look at this. This is what it was like. Like you can see the chandelier there. You can see how the bones are just decorated everywhere. It was so creepy, but also cool. But it was really nice to be in a place that I had previously seen on stream with my community and then be able to be there. It was just wild to me. I also want to give a quick shout out to the food tour company that we used. If you end up going to Prague and you can book a tour with Prague Food Tour, I highly recommend it. We did the delicious food tour with George and it was incredible. It was presenting traditional Czech cuisine and drinks, and it was such a good time. So our family group consisted of 6 people, but we also had 3 other people with us on the tour, and the max is 10. And it felt like a good amount of people for this sort of tour. It felt as if we were all included and it wasn't too large where people weren't really able to hear everything or people were sort of left behind, which I feel like in some tours they can end up taking on maybe too many people, so it feels as if you're not really experiencing as much. George took us around, told us about the culture, about the food that we were experiencing, as well as the food that we might experience on the rest of our vacation. Also told us a lot about the history of Prague and places that we might want to check out and places that we might not necessarily need to go to. And it just felt as if it was the perfect start to our trip. So on the Delicious Food Tour, which is the tour that we went on, we went to a couple of different places, including Cafe Imperial, Locale, Kalashari, and Misak. And it was, oh my God. The food was delicious. Again, I'm a really picky eater. I think most people would be able to eat a lot of this food, but even if you have allergies or you don't eat certain types of cuisine, we had already spoken to the tour guide and told them what we could or could not eat, and they really accommodated us. And not only did they do that, they also told us if there were items that would be on the table that might not fit exactly what we would be able to eat or we would be comfortable eating, and would provide options if it wasn't something that we could do. But also if it was, maybe it had something that you might not necessarily love, but it wasn't really as big of a flavor, would tell you that if you wanted to taste it. It just ended up being a really good start to our trip, and I can highly recommend Prague Food Tour, and I will drop that link down below. Our very last day of the trip might actually be one of my favorite days of the entire time that we were in Prague. It ended up just being Andy and I that wanted to go to these 3 locations, but we went to the Prague Botanical Garden, we went to the Prague Zoo, and we also went to the Prague Palace. I had actually found out from my brother that the Prague Zoo is a big tourist location. It's a really nice zoo and a great place that if you have the opportunity to go, it's definitely worth it. And I would say it was definitely worth it. That was kind of like the middle thing that we had gone to that day. We started off at the Prague Botanical Garden, and we ended up having to walk up this really, really big hill, walking through these vineyards. At the very start of it, I was like, I don't know if this was a mistake, because it's already like the last day of our trip, and we'd done tons of walking and tons of climbing, and my body was really feeling it. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. And then we got to the top, and the views were incredible. You couldn't see like everything of the city, but you got to see a lot, and I thought it was really, really nice. I thought it was a breathtaking view. But then also the gardens itself was it was just a beautiful space. It was really nice because we were very close to celebrating our 10-year anniversary of being together. It just felt like a kind of little romantic getaway on this family trip that we had gone on. Then when we went to the zoo, I was very excited because I really like zoos, as long as they're zoos that are treating the animals well and rehabilitating them, all of that. It felt like that. There was only one place that I felt probably didn't need to be included, the polar bears, because it's not cold. It was a very, very large zoo. It felt as if we were in a zoo, but we were also in a zoo that was not in the States. It wasn't the Bronx Zoo. Not that the Bronx Zoo was bad, but it was just expansive. There was also a lot of animals that were not expected. Like, they had animals that were sort of hybrid. Not really, but there was one that was like sort of like a fox wolf. It was just really interesting to see. Then we ended our little trip by going to the Prague Palace, or the chateau, that's also right by all of these places. Oh my gosh. This place was incredible. The palace itself, like the design of it, was influenced by Italian and French architecture, which I'm sure my boyfriend really enjoyed since he's an architect. It was stunning. And then we went inside. The people who were in each of the rooms were very good about explaining where we were on the pamphlet that they gave us so that we can read. There was a little bit of a language barrier, but the pamphlet was also in English as well. We were able to learn a little bit more where we were standing and what was significant about each of these rooms. The people who were working there were just absolutely fabulous. They were super kind. I stepped into this one room, and it was breathtaking. So the room itself was massive, but it was painted to be even larger. And it was that trompe-l'oeil. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that, but it's the type of painting style where the wall itself will be flat, but it'll have that optical illusion look that there's 3D there. It also just expanded. The ceiling itself was curved, but it added on another floor that wasn't there. But visually, you're looking at it and you're seeing all of these people and these structures that are part of the building. And it was just wild to see this huge art that was unexpected. It wasn't as if it didn't fit in with the rest of the chateau, but it still stood out. I don't know. It was just breathtaking. And then we also walked the gardens. A lot of the statues that would have been in the gardens had been moved to the basement of the chateau itself so that they could be temperature controlled and a little bit more preserved. And these statues were wild. It was like walking into a fairy tale. There was this huge expansive staircase that you were able to go on. You weren't able to access it from inside the chateau, just so that because they were like paid tours, so it was easy to like keep track. Once you were out on the grounds, you were able to walk onto the staircase. You were able to experience all parts of it from every angle because it was just so much to see. There were all of these statues. It was absolutely beautiful and stunning. And if you are going to Prague, I can highly recommend all three of these places, but the chateau itself, the Prague Palace, was absolutely beautiful. I just realized I've been calling it the Prague Palace this entire time, but it's the Troja Palace. It's located in Troja, Prague. But anyway, we're getting close to the end of this speed build, so why don't we pop into the game and I can show you around a little bit more. So this is the renovated version of South Square Coffee with the Avant Gardes addition to it. In Windenburg. I love that the entrance is actually within the courtyard, and I love that you can see into the cafe by just walking through and accessing each part. I know there's no windows in the back here, but because of the bookcases, it was kind of necessary. And just having the green spaces here, it just felt as if, like, even having that plant garden thing upstairs, it just felt as if it was a nice place to have these little seating areas outside with no seats, but whatever, don't look at that part. And then of course you can see in here the courtyard and that staircase that you would see in Shakespeare and Hathaway. So you can see that the employees have this little pathway to get through, and they'll end up in their little cafe kitchen area, and then they can serve their coffee and their pastries here. Patrons have the ability to sit anywhere they want, and they can also check out any of these books. And then of course there is another access point to the Avant Gardes club space, and then all of these bathrooms. Then if you are either waiting for a spot in the bathroom or you just want to hang out and be a little bit secluded, there's also this little seating area back here. In the avant-garde space, you would come through the staircase in the courtyard and you would end up in this little reception area where, if we were in the show, you would see Sebastian sitting right here. And of course, this little seating area, which I think is just really nice. It feels very Luella Shakespeare. And I just really like how it's open to the reception area, and it just has like this open pathway to bring you over to either the reading nook or the co-working space. And then of course there's a little bathroom tucked in here. Here is the little reading nook. I feel like it's really cozy, and I would definitely want to spend some time in there. And then I really like the co-working space because it feels as if it's a place where each of the club members can be represented. They each have their little desk here. There's a little green spot, so it feels a little more homey. And of course, then there's a little kitchenette area where they can all just get together and enjoy a cup of coffee or some pastries from downstairs, or even make their own stuff up here. And that's pretty much the entire build. I know it's not much. It's a large building, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. And if you end up using this in any of your playthroughs of The Sims, please share it with me. I'd love to see how you end up liking this renovation of South Square Coffee. If you would like to see more Sims content or any other game content, I'm currently playing The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which I'm obsessed with. We're also doing Disney Dreamlight Valley. We're doing Disney Speedstorm. Occasionally we do Dead by Daylight, which is a little bit of a different vibe. And of course, we're doing my Around the World's Legacy in The Sims 4. So if you'd ever like to join us, we'd love to have you in chat. We are at twitch.tv/Teknikolour, and I'm live pretty much every day. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.